So we are going to start the slideshow and start learning. So I'm going to share my screen, at least try to. Oh. Okay, I hope you all can see it. And I also hope that you can take a few notes. This is not a formal lecture. You're not going to be tested, but there are a few things that you might want to write down. And this is something that you don't have to write down, but you absolutely have to remember it. And that is, don't take chances. I cannot tell you that a lot of there are not really that many disasters in people hunting and then consuming mushrooms. But of the few there are, some are when people said, oh, I really want it. I want to make this dish. It'll be okay. Another is when you have a large number of small specimens, check each one, because sometimes a different one will have sort of will have gotten in when you grabbed the whole bunch. A really important one is never eat raw mushrooms. I know that people put raw mushrooms in salads. I know that supermarkets, have raw mushrooms as part of their salad bar. I personally would never eat it. It is a species that probably won't hurt you, but it really is a good rule to never eat a raw mushroom. And another rule is that when you try a new species for the first time, don't eat a lot of it, just in case you have a reaction to it. And this is a really important rule. There are no rules for knowing which mushrooms are toxic. You really just have to learn each species individually. And that's why we're going to talk today about 9 safe species. Here's some sort of old husband's tales that are not true. A poisonous mushroom will not turn a silver spoon black. And the other thing is the fact that an animal has nibbled on a mushroom does not mean that you can eat it safely. Okay? It means that maybe that animal could eat it safely, but actually, you don't know if that animal died 3 days later. So forget that. Now, here's something that I would like you to write down, or at least maybe Mary can put it into the chat. There are, Michael Kuo has a wonderful blog, a wonderful website called mushroomexpert.com. This is reliable and helpful for learning about mushrooms. The website that I use the most for edibles is foragerchef.com, which is an amazing website by a chef who has a restaurant that specializes in wild food. I'd love to eat there. And then I recently discovered a third website that I think is worth looking at, and it's called mushroom-appreciation.com by a modest woman who never gives her last name, but it is very good on identification, on foraging, and she collects recipes from around the web. So in the case of Forager Chef, it is all his recipes. So they're all trustworthy, but but the fact is that the guy's a chef, so some of them are quite complex, although not all. But in mushroomappreciation.com, the recipes are often simpler, and also there's more emphasis on vegan recipes. So do you need special gear to hunt mushrooms? Not really. You don't even need the stuff shown here. What you do want to do is you want to have preferably paper or wax paper bags, the ones that are left that come in the cereal boxes are fine. Um, any ordinary paper bag is good. And you want to keep the species separate. Don't mix species in the bags. The scissors are not exactly standard, but when I'm picking for the table and I'm trying to snip the stem cleanly so that I don't get any dirt, I find it very useful. The knife is, you don't really need a mushroom knife, but the thing that makes it a mushroom knife as opposed to a pocket knife is the brush. This is really, really important because mushrooms are full of crevices. They're full of pores and gills and fronds and all kinds of cracks. And if you put in one mushroom that you have not cleaned the dirt off of, you will find that every single mushroom in that bag is now essentially inedible. But that doesn't mean that you have to run out and buy a mushroom knife. I mean, if you have an old toothbrush, that's fine. This is not, something that you have to be rich to do. So I want to say one other thing. What should you carry your mushrooms in? I know that there are people that really push the concept of the mushroom basket. I just find that it gets in my way if I'm trying to navigate a trail. I think that a shopping bag is fine. Whatever works for you is fine. I personally use a shopping bag. So the way I'd like to do this is by going through our edible mushroom year. Now, this slide actually is borrowed from the New York Mycological Society, and we have somewhat different climate and species than New York. So I'm not going to follow all of their species, but the concept is really good. And I'm going to start out with what's the species on the bottom, oysters, which you'll note is one of the species that you can find all year round. And that's great. So if it's above freezing, you can find oysters. The first time I ever found oyster mushrooms was in Tamworth, New Hampshire, which is fairly far north, and it was in February. So this is Pleurotus ostriatus. It is a saprobe. This is a word that is good to learn. A saprobe is a creature that lives by decomposing dead and rotting material. And a lot of our edible mushrooms are saprobes. So this is the Pleurotus species, which is our edible. So when you live on dead or dying wood, wood itself has almost no nitrogen. So the fungi that live on it have adapted by finding ways to scavenge nitrogen. And all true oyster species are carnivores. All of them have evolved methods to kill and digest and then eat nematode worms, which are microscopic worms which live by the trillions in any moist organic environment like rotting wood or soil. The Pleurotus species use chemical warfare, and their relatives, the Hohenbuehlia, use physical warfare. And it's really amazing. Their weapons look like the kinds of things that medieval knights did their fighting with. So the different Pleurotus species have different chemical strategies, but the one that we eat has evolved what's been called a nerve gas in a lollipop strategy for its murders. And it's really amazing. Here's the hyphae of the Pleurotus, our oyster mushroom mycelium. And these lollipops contain what they're calling a nerve gas. It actually is not very toxic, but it turns out that it's toxic to nematodes. When the nematode touches it, it releases its toxin and kills the worm. So if you are a vegan and you're eating wild oyster mushrooms, you're sort of eating secondhand meat. On the other hand, if you're eating farmed oysters, you don't have to worry, but they won't taste as good because they haven't had the same diet. So here's what you look for. The cap may be white, but it also may be tan. The cap is smooth. Under the cap, there are parallel, pretty tightly packed gills, which are what is called decurrent. That is, they go down and actually sort of merge into the stem and attach towards the bottom of the stem. The stem can be of different lengths depending on where on the log the mushroom is. These are a lookalike that I would recommend ignoring. They're called angel wings. They're only on conifers. They're always pure white. They're small. They're very delicate. I would say forget about them. So this is one of the things that the forager chef does with oysters, and that is he grills them with olive oil and herbs and all kinds of things. You can read his recipe and instructions. And they are meaty and they're delicious. They're mild in flavor, so they'll pick up other flavors. This is a recipe from the Mushroom Appreciation website, and these are called vegan fried chicken, which are fried oyster mushrooms. So just to reiterate, the important thing is you're looking for firm specimens. And as far as I'm concerned, the big problem with oysters is that they if the weather is warm, they tend to have a lot of insect inhabitants who not only eat them, but make them very difficult to clean and kind of messy. So the other thing is if it's been raining, they can get waterlogged. So you want ones that are firm and reasonably clean. Okay, now May Day. The beginning of May is the season for morels. Morels are one of these iconic mushrooms that people go insane for. Whole books have been written about them, and with people talking about their morel manias. They are the first mushrooms of spring. I think that apple blossoms are a good sort of key for when they appear. Morels are like people in that they come in a number of different colors. And like people of different colors, they are all good. And they're easy to identify. They have these sort of unique pits in which the spores develop on the outside. And if you cut them in half, they are hollow on the inside. Nothing else quite looks like this. They are incredibly delicious, but they have three really big problems. One is that they really don't grow much in New England. If you're looking for morels, you can look in an abandoned apple orchard. That's a pretty good place. You can, if you find a dead elm, you might do well. The problem is that morels are mushrooms of disaster. They're basically mycorrhizal. That is, they form semi-permanent affiliations with the roots of their partner trees. And they're happy as underground mycelia exchanging nutrients with their partner trees. However, when the tree dies, as this is out west, this is this is in Washington State on the eastern side of the Cascades. When there's a disaster and the tree dies or starts to die, the morel, this is my interpretation, the morel says, I better think about spreading spores. So that's when morels form fruiting bodies. And come up and allow themselves to be picked. So, by the way, the other, just to go back, the other place that you find morels, in addition to burnt forests in other great disaster areas, is in the upper Midwest. For some reason, places like Michigan and Minnesota seem to have a lot of morels. So one thing, I mean, there are two ways that people in our region who really, really want to morel hunt can do it. One is you go to where there was a forest fire the summer before, and the other is that you join a mushroom club in the upper Midwest that has an annual morel foray, and you get them to accept you as a guest. So the second problem with morels is they are very, very hard to see. And I've just learned that I don't seem to be able to go backwards on my slides. So, oh, Mary just showed me how to do it. So the other thing is that morels really are difficult to find. What you have to do, and by the way, you'll have to do the same thing if you look for black trumpets in our region, is you have to do something called getting your eye in, which is that you somehow imprint your brain with the pattern of that mushroom, and it will really, if you're lucky, you'll be able to find it. So there is one morel in this picture, and you can look for it. And here it is. This may look like a morel. This is a pine cone. This is one of the awful things, is that when you look for morels, you end up finding an enormous number of pine cones. So that's what it's like. In fact, morels are so difficult to see that a couple of brothers in, I think in Minnesota, who hunted morels every spring and birds every fall, developed a company to make camouflage that is patterned according to the morel type pattern. And it really, I think, is really good. It's impressive. The third problem that morels have is that they are toxic. It's really interesting. If they are not, a raw morel is toxic. There is no question about this. There was a banquet in Vancouver some years back. They served raw morels in a salad, and 72 people ended up in the ER. What is even worse is that last year, 2 people died from morel toxicity, and it was because they ate at a I think fairly upscale restaurant in Bozeman, Montana, and it served under, the chef decided he didn't really have to cook the morels. He could just sort of pour a boiling liquid over them and then serve them as a part of a sushi roll. And 2 people died as a result. So the thing is, you will not ever get poisoned because you know what you have and you will be careful. People don't need a license to hunt mushrooms the way they do to hunt deer or to fish. But I truly think that any restaurant serving wild mushrooms should have to have a license and should have to pass a test. So the thing about morels, if you can find them, they're wildly delicious. Cook them thoroughly and don't eat too many the first time. Um, the the toxicity expert in this country, Michael Bugh, has said if morels weren't so delicious, he would be tempted to list them as toxic. So since they're hard to find, they're rare in our region, and they can be toxic. Why am I even talking about them? Well, one is because they are so iconic and because they are so delicious and amazing. But the other is every year, some people in New England find them in garden mulch. So, and also, as I said, in abandoned apple orchard, and if you can find a dying tree where they may have been mycorrhizal. And in terms of cooking morels, obviously you should cook them well, but, and this is true, I think this is a good general lesson for all really delicious, delicate mushrooms. The simpler, the better. When I spent some time in Italy hunting and eating mushrooms, what essentially every cook said was, when you have a really delicious mushroom, cream, pasta, eggs, because those will show off the mushroom but won't compete with it. So this is a forager chef morels in cream recipe. And this is my morels on an omelet recipe. So now we're gonna have here's an edible that has a really, really long season of growing. And it's the opposite of camouflage. This is what Michael Kuo calls a 55-mile-an-hour mushroom. You can even go faster. It's the reason that people have those bumper stickers saying, "I break for mushrooms." This is a mushroom that you can't miss. This is chicken of the woods. And we have two species. Both of them have the top is colored orange in both of them, but one has a yellow underside and one has a white underside. And they all have pores, tiny little pores on the bottom. And they both are tree pathogens. That is, they're killers and rotters of trees. So the yellow underside species grows on the trunks of trees. It's the one that you see when you're, from a distance and is really hard to miss. It's mostly in shelves or clusters because it is a heart rotter. It's rotting the heart of the tree. The white pored chicken is around the base of the tree, sometimes extending outward following a root because it is a butt or root rotter. If you're lucky enough to find baby chickens, kind of chicks, which by the way, I've never been that lucky. These are the best. They're going to be the tenderest and they're going to be the easiest to digest and cook. Just make sure that it's orange on the top and yellow on the bottom, or white. But you probably won't find the babies. You'll probably find older ones. Now, what this shows is a flush of older chickens that someone, not me, but someone has already harvested. And what you can see is that this person has cut off the growing edge of each frond, of each bracket. And the reason is it's the growing edge that is the youngest, the tenderest, the most delicious, and the most versatile to cook with. So when you find a flush of these mushrooms, you want to really use your fingers to see, is it at all soft? Is it at all plastic? Can you, can you make it move a little? How tender is it, in other words? You don't really want the older woody parts. So here's a chicken of the woods hash I made with not that absolute youngest and tenderest, but reasonably young and tender chickens. But if you can really get tender ones, it can actually be a really good chicken substitute in almost any recipe where the chicken is cut up into pieces. So here are a couple of pretty straightforward recipes from Forager Chef: buffalo chicken nuggets and pasta with lemon. So this is a type of, this is a mushroom that is many beginners' gateway mushroom because it's so easy to see. It doesn't really have any toxicity problems, and you can sometimes really get a lot of it.
So someone did have a question. How do you cut the chickens from the trees? Do you just?
Oh, well, we had a question about cutting. How do you cut it off? This is why you have a mushroom knife. Okay. Okay. And I've been finding chanterelles up in the foothills of the White Mountains, and I've been finding the first chanterelles for for a week or so. So here's the thing about chanterelles. Chanterelles grow singly. Each chanterelle is separate in soil, and you will see in a couple of minutes why I'm emphasizing that. And I took these photos here. They both happen to be entries to people's driveways. And you can see that the chanterelles are small and they're scattered. So even if you're lucky enough to find a group of chanterelles like this, they are growing individually. You might find chanterelles that are twinned, that are joined as a twin on their roots, But if you were to dig this up, it would not be a single joined clump. It would be just a group of chanterelles. Young chanterelles have ridges instead of true gills. And as as they mature, their caps will become more complicated in shape, but they're still really easy to identify. Um, I found these slightly older chanterelles yesterday, and I realized that as they get older, their ridges really start to look more like real gills. This is what some people think is a look-alike. It's the scaly vase chanterelle. It's actually a gorgeous, interesting mushroom, but it's not a good edible. It tends to give people stomach aches. And it's not really a look-alike. I mean, if you really, really compare them, here's the chanterelle. The ridges or gills stop partway down. In the scaly vase, they're weird, sort of sculptural, odd ridges that go all the way down. It's hollow all the way down, whereas the chanterelle is solid. The chanterelle has a smooth cap, and obviously the scaly vase, as is its name, does not have a smooth cap. So, but that being said, I love finding scaly vase chanterelles. They have incredible colors and they're gorgeous. I would love to have this as a ceramic object. There is a scary chanterelle look-alike, although not many people are fooled. Omphalotus, which is also called the jack-o'-lantern, it has true gills and never has ridges. It grows in clumps on the basis of trees or stumps or roots. So here's a typical growth pattern of the jack-o'-lantern. They, in this case, they're growing around the base of dead wood, and here it's on the roots of dead wood. Sometimes you'll just find one in the grass, but when you dig down, you'll see that it is definitely growing on dead wood. And the other thing, if you dig down, that you'll find is it always, always grows in a clump. And that's why I emphasize so much that chanterelles grow singly. This is not a mushroom that will kill you. It is a mushroom that will make you wish that you were dead. And the only person I know who actually thought it was a chanterelle and picked it and ate it was someone who had lived in the South, and he moved to our region and thought maybe this is what northern chanterelles look like. This is why it's called the jack-o'-lantern. It is often bioluminescent. It is really difficult to get this kind of photograph. Most people try and fail, but it's exciting to try sometimes. Now, here's what I think of as a chanterelle look-alike that is not scary, and it's called the sweet tooth. When it's young and you're looking at it from above, the cap looks a lot like a very pale chanterelle cap. and it can be just about the same size and shape, but it has these little teeth instead of ridges or gills. So they are related, but one is toothed and one is gilled. This has several names. They're different species, but they are all good edibles if you find them. There's sweet tooth, honey tooth, hedgehog. Here are some mature hedgehogs so that you really can see the toothed underside. And I'm not going to even talk about how to gather, store, and cook all of these, because the Forager Chef has a wonderful section on this, and you should just go to him. So the chanterelle, because of its orange color, it advertises itself pretty well. But there's another member of the chanterelle family that actually I think is even more delicious, and it is really well camouflaged. And this is something that we should start looking for now, and it is the black trumpet. This is, I have to say, this is one of my top two mushrooms. I really love it. And you'll see it's very smooth. So you don't see gills. They are very common. They're all around. But one great thing is they are not only delicious, but you cannot mistake them for anything else. They have this very thin flesh. It's almost like somebody rolled black or gray paper into a cone, but you can see, by the way, they're different colors. You can't mistake it for anything else, but it's very hard to see. Now, this species is not smooth on the underside. I don't generally find this species. It has sort of ridges like the other chanterelle, but if you find this species, it is equally delicious and equally safe. So they can be gray, they can be sort of this brownish kind of hard to describe color. They can be black, although sometimes they're being really, really black means that they're starting to be past their prime. But you will see when you pick them whether or not they're good. It will be very clear. So the black trumpet dries really easily. I mean, sometimes I just leave it out on the counter for a day or so and it's dry. It doesn't have many bugs and it doesn't have big bugs. It it has fabulous flavor. This is a mushroom which you can use for almost anything. You can have a very gentle sauce for pasta with cream and shallots. You can make a very strong sauce with red wine and mustard and put it on a steak. You can use it to flavor vodka. People in who know the Tamworth distillery know that there's a blueberry black trumpet cordial, and you can actually taste the black trumpet. It has a long fruiting season, it tends to regrow in the same spots, which, by the way, a lot of mushrooms do this. So chanterelles tend to regrow in the same spots also. So you can not only revisit the following year, but once that patch sort of dries up, you can wait for the next big rain, wait a week, and then go back and see if it's re-sprouted. It has absolutely no toxic lookalikes. And it is very, very, it's a mushroom that people almost never have a bad response to. It only has one problem, and that is it is really, really difficult to see sometimes, not always, but I have to say that I have walked up a road where I knew black trumpets tended to grow and not seen a single black trumpet. And then at the end, turned around and come back down and filled a bag because the light was coming at a different angle and made them visible. So the black trumpet has this really annoying habit. It grows in mixed deciduous forests, so that there are all these dead leaves on the ground, and it looks a lot like a dead leaf. And this is its real problem. It's the only bad thing. It's sort of like hunting morels. It's one of those things where you just have to get your eye in. And sometimes if you can find one, you can find more. Okay, later in the season, we have puffballs. All puffballs are saprobes. They all live by rotting organic matter. They are not partnering with trees, and they're not pathogens. They're just sort of hanging in there, living on that moist organic stuff in soil, among roots, or on dead wood. These large species, which are Calvacia, tend to grow on lawns and meadows. These smaller species, which I'm more likely to find on a hike in the woods, live on dead wood. Their genus name is Lycoperdon, and I may have to get myself a cough drop. So lyco means wolf, and perdon means fart. So remember this. Puffballs have no exterior features. Every other mushroom that we've talked about and that we will talk about is recognizable by its exterior features. They have pits, they have gills, they have pores, they have just every possible kind of way. All of these, by the way, the reason that they have all these features is because mushrooms have evolved in many, many separate pathways. And at some point, they all were faced with the problem of expanding their spore producing surface. So all of these gills, pores, pits, whatever, are ways to produce more spores. The reason the puffball doesn't have any exterior features is because this whole massive thing is nothing but a giant ball of spores. And this is why it has the name of wolf fart, that when the spores are ripe, a little hole develops in the skin of the puffball. And what releases the spores are raindrops, that every time a drop of rain falls on the surface of the puffball, it releases a little puff of spores. And this is very clever because obviously, if it's raining, there will be damp conditions that will be good for the spores to germinate. I have to say that teenagers have been known to inhale puffball spores. These are the same teenagers who inhale glue fumes. I mean, they will inhale anything that they think may get them high. Unfortunately, this is not a good thing to do, and it's really bad for their lungs. So don't inhale the spores. Puffballs were my gateway mushroom for eating. They were the first things that I found, I spotted and found and cooked and ate. When you want to eat a puffball, what you have to do is cut it, just slice it in half down the middle. And this is what you want to see. You want to see this homogeneous, pure white surface. It's as, I mean, think of it as a block of tofu, which has the same sort of non-flavor. So the reason that for some puffballs, people worry that it may be an amanita, a poisonous amanita in the egg stage. There are amanitas that are toxic and that develop from a white egg that could be taken for a puffball. It's unlikely, but you are looking to make sure that there is no sign of any sort of embryonic structure in that, okay? You are also looking to make sure that there is no color. This developing of color means that the spores are developing and this puffball is no longer edible. So just throw it away. Puffballs, when I started to eat puffballs, I would find relatively small ones. I would cut thin slices. I would saute them on both sides in butter until they turned slightly brown. I would salt them, and they were delicious as nibbles. They were kind of, it was like the, you know, they weren't crispy, but other than that, they were sort of like a soft potato chip. When you have a larger puffball, you really have to expand a little more work to make them taste good. I have to say, I don't even like the larger ones because to me, it's like eating a, a giant tasteless marshmallow. And it's hard to make it taste good. The Forager Chef has some really kind of amazing puffball recipes. I recommend that you look at them because they're interesting, but in order to make puffballs taste good, he really, it's not that they taste bad, they just have no flavor. He really goes to a lot of trouble and uses a lot of sort of chefy tricks. And even the forager chef has said that if I'm going to play with something like tofu, I'd really rather play with actual tofu. But these are fun to find. They are fun to fiddle with. If you fry a thin slice gently and put a little salt on it, it will taste delicious, especially if you do it in butter. Okay, here's another sort of 55-mile-an-hour mushroom, especially when it's growing on the trunk of a dead or well, it's not always a dead tree. It may just be a tree that has a wound that the lion's mane is taking advantage of. So this is an edible. It may be on a wounded live tree or it may be on dead wood. It's called Hericium. It's called lion's mane. It's sometimes called bear tooth. People talk about multiple species. There's a species with these sort of stalactites or needles hanging down. It's another way to increase spore bearing surface. And there's a species that looks like coral. My personal theory, which is, and mind you, I do not do DNA analysis, is that if it's vertical, like if it's up on a vertical tree trunk, it will develop these stalactites or needles. If it's on top of a horizontal log, it will be more the coral thing. By the way, I should I should tell you that when it's young and on a fallen log, it may have a pink color. That's fine. It's not a problem. On the side of a fallen log, what happens is that the lower part of it will start to develop spines. This is the power of gravity. And I take this as meaning that my theory is as good as anybody else's. But whether it has, I prefer the coral type for the simple reason that all these sort of needles fall apart when you try to cook them and they're annoying. But if you can get some of the solid white meat out of it, and the coral is really better for this, it's just saute it. And it is, make sure it's cooked and it's a good edible that a lot of people like. It's also one that is often sold. It's farmed. It's widely farmed. You can buy ones that have been farmed in Asia. You can buy ones that have been farmed right here in New England. And it won't have the same flavor. The forager chef keeps emphasizing the flavor of different wild mushrooms. He thinks that this mushroom has a seafood flavor. And therefore, he has several recipes for it, which I think are worth trying. They're not too complicated. And he tries to do things that will take advantage of that seafood flavor of the wild form. Okay. Now, when you get to late September and early October, people start looking for hens. And this is a fabulous mushroom. We all want desperately to find one or several in good shape. It has this fabulous structure with fronds, basically. You can see the kind of structure of this amazing mushroom. And the chicken of the woods is called chicken because it tastes like chicken. The hen of the woods is called hen because it looks like a ruffled up hen sitting at the base of an oak tree. And it's almost always, it's not 100%, but it's almost always an oak. Now, this beautiful and delicious mushroom is another tree pathogen. It's out to kill that oak. And you will find it at the base or a little further along where it's gotten hold of a root. It is a butt or a root rotter. When you find a hen and you collect it, and you need a really big bag sometimes, come back the following year to the same place because it will recur. What happens is that the hen will recur maybe up to 6 or 7 years in the same place. And then, of course, because it's been rotting away all that time, the tree will fall down. So, it grows pretty quickly. It takes a lot of courage to leave your hen to grow because someone else might find it and take it. Hens grow really, really large. This hen weighed 100 pounds. It was found by a friend of mine, Bill Neal, who's a really great mushroom hunter, and he gave it to this restaurant, which paid him back in meals. I asked him how he got it out. He went back to his car, got a tarp out of the trunk, and managed to shift the hen onto the tarp and drag it out of the woods. But they're rarely this big. So this is something that's really nice to find. You don't have to leave it to get bigger. You can just take it as it is, this little chick of the woods. Here's what the forager chef does with a very small hen. He uses an Italian way of cooking it, which is under a weight. So you cook it with some oil in a frying pan, put this weight on it, and you end up basically with a delicious meaty steak. But you don't have to have this special gadget, and you don't even have to have a baby hen to do this trick. Here's when you split a hen in good condition apart, this is what it looks like. You can see, by the way, that it can be really difficult to clean if the tree it's under has been dribbling, you know, frass and other stuff into it. You can cut a cross section of one of these fronds, like cutting from here, make it of equal thickness. And just sear it in some oil in a frying pan. So the way I do it, this is my frying pan. This one hasn't yet been turned. The way I do it is I just put another frying pan on top. And if you don't have, like a heavy cast iron pan, just put a different frying pan and then put like a big can of tomatoes or something to weight it down. And this is a fabulous, this is a way to get people who only eat meat and potatoes to eat mushrooms. The hen is really lends itself to kind of steaky presentations. So here's a hen that the forager chef has cut, and he's going to grill this into dinner steaks and then serve it with salsa verde. Hens are really, really meaty mushrooms and delicious. And here's another thing that both the forager chef and I and many, many other people have done, which is just to take, a single little frond and roast it in the oven. Just brush it with olive oil, roast it in the oven, add a little salt, or you can do whatever you want. You could add garlic to the oil, you can use herbs. And when it gets really, really like this, it'll be crispy, it'll be fabulous, and it's a great nibble that you can offer people before dinner or when you're just, to have with a beer. You can, you can take the fronds of a hen and you can just brush them with olive oil and just roast them. I mean, hens are great. And also, when you get a good sized hen, you have enough often to share with your friends or to dry for the year to come. Okay, now the last mushroom of the season. Often this mushroom doesn't really appear until there's been a frost. So I've generally found it by going up a trail to a slightly higher altitude. This this is one this is a mushroom that I really love. I think it's great. It is called the late fall oyster. It is not a true oyster. It has no relationship to the oyster mushroom, although the forager chef cooks them both the same way. And in fact, he'll make a mixed grill of late fall oysters and real oysters if he happens to get them both fruiting at the same time. He'll even add a farmed king oyster and have a triple oyster grill. So there are all kinds of good things about this oyster, but I also want you to notice the color. Remember that the true oyster is white or tan. And this one is all kinds of colors, including this kind of khaki greenish. When you get a lot of it. Here it has parallel gills that come down, and it doesn't have a stem. The true oyster has a stem. This has like an attachment place where it's attached. It grows on dead wood. So here's where it attaches. And this, if you can see, they're tiny hairs that are diagnostic. So this is a very, very easy mushroom to recognize. I love it because you get a lot of it when you find it. I love it because it's late in the season. It's cold, so it doesn't have bugs the way the warm weather oysters have bugs. And I love the colors. Note, it has this kind of sickly yellowish green. Look at these colors. Aren't they amazing? When it gets wet, it gets sort of sticky and viscous and slimy. Okay, why do I love these colors? I love them because they put people off. People love the idea of a white or tan mushroom. They think that is the color that mushrooms ought to be. When they see these weird greens and blacks and yellows, they are turned off and they don't collect this mushroom, and it leaves more for us. So there is nothing not to like about the late fall oyster. Here it is with that same treatment grilled, and that the Forager Chef goes. If you go to Forager Chef and Mushroom Appreciation, you'll find lots of recipes. One reason I like it is that it is a very solid, meaty mushroom. So my way of dealing with it when I get a lot is that I slice it, I sear it and saute it, and then cook it into a kind of a very simple kind of ragu with maybe tomatoes, maybe garlic, enough that it forms kind of a something that's it's like a pre-sauce that can be. And then what I do is I pack it in an airtight way into a container. I make sure that the top is covered with olive oil or melted butter, and I freeze it. And then when I'm making a spaghetti sauce or a stew or whatever I want, a kind of a meaty, solid mushroom, and I can use my frozen ragu of the late fall oysters, and they are really great for this. Their flavor is not so strong that it doesn't blend with other things, but you don't want to use it like, it's not like the morel or chanterelle where you want to do pasta eggs. You want to you want to use this with something with a stronger flavor. So, and this brings up something about freezing mushrooms. Never, ever freeze a mushroom raw. you must cook mushrooms before freezing them. And the reason is that even when they're frozen, their enzymes will continue to work and they will be degrading the mushroom's flesh. And people have been sickened by being fed mushrooms that were frozen raw. So again, I'm going to suggest that you look at the two websites to see recipes. But again, this is a meaty, solid mushroom that can take a lot of flavor and some serious cooking, grilling, roasting, things like that. Here's some forager chef. These are young ones. And this is when you look at what the forager chef does with late fall oysters, a lot of what he does is the same grilling or pan frying, but with different sauces. Like before there was a salsa verde, this is with an aioli. And this is with very, very young the baby late fall oysters, which you often find, and it's a stir fry that he's done. Also, for those of you who camp or who like jerky, the Mushroom Appreciation website has a detailed recipe for oyster mushroom jerky, which you might want to look at. So here are the mushrooms that we looked at. There are true oysters with their gills. There are morels with pits. There's chicken of the woods that has pores on the underside, and that you have to be careful to get the tender growing parts of. We had chanterelles. We had the chanterelle relative, the black trumpet. We had puffballs. We had lion's mane or hericium. We had hens and late fall oysters. There are different ways to preserve mushrooms. Drying is a really good way. I've never bought a dryer because I'm also not the kind of person who generally collects so much that I need to dry. You can freeze, again, never never raw, and keeping as much air out as possible. There are pickling. In Eastern Europe, this is a really standard way of preserving mushrooms. You can use a dried mushroom to flavor alcohol. You can flavor vodka, for example, with a dried mushroom. Dried black trumpets are really good. And you can flavor olive oil with dried mushrooms. Please always remember rule number 1, when in doubt, throw it out. And the other 3 rules: Check every specimen in the batch and keep species separate in separate bags as you collect. Never ever eat raw or undercooked mushrooms. And when you try a new species, eat it carefully. Here's an important rule. There are no rules for knowing which mushrooms are toxic. You really have to learn each mushroom one at a time. I have a terrible memory, so for a while I would learn one species every season. So here's the thing about fungi. They are famous for producing weird chemicals. This is why so many of the medicines that we use, things like penicillin and statins, are made by fungi, because fungi have a special machinery to produce chemicals that we actually can't. So even if they're not toxic, you might have a bad response to a particular species. And, people sometimes respond badly to things like strawberries or peanuts or whatever, although for different reasons. Keep in mind that wild foods are not subservient to humans. When you go into the supermarket, you are buying foods that have undergone generations of breeding to make them innocuous. If anything is the opposite of iceberg lettuce, it's a wild mushroom. But but they're different. They're fun. They're delicious. There is no comparison to the thrill of hunting. I mean, there's a reason why you gather berries or forage plants, but hunt mushrooms. It's really exciting. And you will start looking you will start looking at the world around you differently, whether even if you're in the city. There are thousands of American mushroom hunters. It's rare to have any die. You're more likely to die from a hamburger or a bean sprout than from a mushroom. And I have to say, the fact that you are still listening, if you are, means that you will probably be safe. In fact, you'll definitely be safe. So have fun.
We have
That's it.
there's a few questions.
Um,
Can I give them to you?
so how can I?
I will read them to you.
Oh, okay. But it would be nice to, okay.
So one person is asking, what's the best way to clean a hen?
You really cleaning a hen. Wow. You really have to take it apart, frond by frond. You can, one of the things that you can do is you can fill the sink with water or fill a pan with water so that you can dump it in the yard afterwards and swish the hen or whatever other mushroom you're trying to clean around in it. And that will get rid of a lot. You may have to separate the fronds and really brush them off.
So someone found a morel, a single morel under a fringe tree, which we have here in front of the library. Is it possible deer or skunks ate the others, or are there even any others?
Yes, it is absolutely possible that.
Yeah, that's funny. Someone's asking about cleaning to keep from contaminating. I'm not sure what that question's about.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means.
So will cleaning
I don't,
help keep them from contaminating?
In the
Mm.
very beginning, you said something about not putting species together, and if you don't clean them, the debris gets on them.
yeah, it's a good idea to keep species separate, just because you're going to prepare them and cook them separately. And but the other thing is this question of dirt. So
Yeah.
for example, if you have something like a hen that has various bits and pieces of tree mess in it, and you put it in with a mushroom that has gills or pores, you will regret it.
Thank you.
Someone was wondering about what was the name of the black trumpet look-alike? The other
There
mushroom.
was no black trumpet look-alike.
Ah.
Oh, there are two different species of black trumpets. Maybe that's what you're thinking of, one that has rudimentary gills and one that's smooth. They're both, you can treat them both the same.
There's lots of very grateful participants.
That's
Thanking you
great.
for the fun talk and the education. Yep, they're all, can't wait to hunt.
Okay. Thank you for hanging in there and listening.